I'm Sean Bland at the Art Center of Wilmington Island. We are so glad to offer a way to stay connected and continue creating art. Check out our new list of art at home kits for both kids and adults, available for mail order or curbside pickup. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see the latest options. We will post them as quickly as we can make them. Each kit contains everything you need to complete a beautiful painting at home: pre-sketched canvas, an inspiration picture, paint, brushes, and a palette, and this link to watch a tutorial to follow along. All you need to provide is paper towels and a rinse cup for brushes. Now that you have your supplies, it's time to watch the step-by-step tutorial. Time to paint. As we begin working on our mermaid picture, we're going to begin in the background. We're going to use our sponge brush to make our blue and let the water look like it is behind where the mermaid is swimming. So the water's just going to come down through. We're going to be able to use the blue and white together in a streaky fashion to be able to see the stroke of light that's just coming right through. And you can see how easy it is when you load your brush with the blue and the white and just let it fill up all the space. I'm starting over here in this right-hand corner, and I'm just continuing until I get all of the background space filled in. As you will notice on your picture, that we have a sketch that is put in with the paint markers. So it's easy for you to overpaint your picture like I'm doing. And that way you can get all the way up to the lines and cover just a little bit, but you can still see exactly where you need to paint to continue and be able to find the image to paint right over the top of the background. So that's our goal, to get this space covered. I do like the directional of using the paint brush going all diagonally. So as you begin to pick up your paint, if you will just make sure that you continue that all the way through your background, especially as you get into these parts. It's real easy if you just lay down this brush in between the area and just go turn it on its side like that to get the edge done, and then just come back and repaint right over the top, making sure that everything looks like it is on a diagonal. It really makes a continuation of the water line the way it needs to be done. So you'll also notice that as you paint, it takes a lot of paint to cover a background. So you will need to load this brush very often. Every time you run out of paint and you hear your brush scrubbing across your canvas, you will know that you need to pick up a little bit more paint to spread out so that all of your background space is painted in. As you begin to paint down towards the bottom, you can get a little bit more blue and add more blue so that it is darker as you go down towards that bottom area. So it's really fun to get that look of the light beaming in on the mermaid. So I'm going to actually pick up a little more white and just streak it right across in a few places to give that feel of the light just coming right in. And you can do that as much or as little as you want to. Now I'm going to go in and continue down at the bottom and just make sure that I have all of my canvas covered around her shape. I added a little bit of the darker blue down here in this area so I could make sure that it looks darker at the bottom. So I filled in enough of the area in there that you can see that once we paint her body and her tail, that it's gonna be real easy for us to have a good background around that space. So now that I'm finished with that brush, I'm just gonna rinse it out in the water, and then I'm gonna tap it dry and move on to another brush. The next brush I'm gonna actually use to make her tail, and I'm gonna start with that first. So I'm picking up green and I'm adding yellow to it. And as I paint, what I wanna be able to do is just use the edge of the brush to come in and make the line or the edge of the tail. And then as I begin the middle section, I wanna make sure that I'm using enough of the yellow in streaks to make it look like the tail needs to be defined with those lines. So I'm just picking up yellow, and each time I use one streak or one line, one brush stroke of yellow, I come back and I get another one, because I want to continue doing that until I get the look of texture that I want the tail to have. So I'm going to continue to do that through both sides. I'm going to pick back up on the other side. I'm using the line of the brush just to make the line of the tail or the edge of the tail. And then I'm going to continue adding the yellow brush strokes to get the streaks and the green, almost alternating, but not specifically every other time, but just enough so that you can see that the texture is really fun to look at, and it does look like it is textured just the way the tail would be. Now you can go back in the very center part. I mixed the dark blue and the green together, and I added a little bit more definition in between where the two tail fins come together. Now once again, I'm just using the line of the brush to go through and create the line or the edge of the tail. I'm using that with the blue, and now I'm going to continue to add a yellow pattern in just as soon as I fill in that space. So I do the fill in and the line on the left side, then I can come in and complete it on the right side. Basically, this is just an underpainting for the pattern that I'm going to put on the tail. So you can be pretty creative when you get ready to make a design. It'll be real easy for you to go right on top of this space now that you have it all filled in. So I just use the flat part of the brush to go into the middle to make sure that I have the canvas covered. And then I just use the edge of the brush like this, the line of the brush, to make the tail edge. So now I have that created. I have darker on the left-hand side and a lighter color green going toward the right-hand side. So that definitely creates the feel of the roundness that we need for that object, for that tail. Okay, now we want that to be continued on up in the back part of her suit. So I'm going to continue with that by adding just more green. I'm going to use the full part of the brush to fill in the space. And then I'm going to use the edge or the toe of the brush to go in and make the line. And once I fill in all the space, I'm going to add yellow in the center to make sure that she looks round. So I'm adding a little bit more yellow in this middle area. And then after I add the yellow in that space, then I'll come back and add more of the green on the other side, the right-hand side. That way it's darker on both sides, and then it's a little bit lighter in the center. And that makes that shape become a form and really look like it's three-dimensional. So if you need more dark on your brush, just add some blue to the green, and then you can use the full line, the full spread of the brush to continue to fill in all that space. And once you have that filled in, then you are ready to go and put your pattern on. Now this can be a fun pattern that you can do with greens and blues and yellows, and it's pretty much a pattern that's a checkerboard, but you can make it a little different if you would like to. But as I pick up more yellow and more blue, I'm gonna go in and just load my brush with a blue-green first. And I'm just gonna come in and I'm just going to go in and lay a brush stroke of color, just a brush stroke of the darker blue-green in, and almost make it look like it's, a complete checkerboard, just by taking the blue, laying it down almost like every other stroke. Once you get started, you'll be able to see that I'm just leaving about one brush stroke in between each one of the brush strokes that I make. And I'm using the full width of the brush to actually lay down the pattern that I'm creating. So literally just one brush stroke, about the same width and the same length, will create that pattern. And once I have the blue done, I'll come back and do the yellow, and then it'll be a mix of yellow and green. I'm going to continue doing that up in this area. It is definitely uneven. Then I can just take the yellow and alternate in between the blues and pick up some of those colors. Now you can see I'm adding a little bit of white to the yellow, and that way it stands out a little bit more. And you can add a full brush stroke of the yellow right beside the blue, and you can see how you begin to get that pattern. So I'm doing the same thing all the way through the tail. I'm not planning it specifically, I'm just putting it in as I want to. That way it's just a fun, natural kind of design instead of one that's rigid. So now I have everything that I need put in for that shape. If you want to be more specific and do something in more detail, you certainly can. But that's just a fun approach to do it. If you want to come back after that's completely dry and add more yellow to it, you could really get the yellow to be brighter. If you wanted brightness, you could certainly do that. But it would have to be a little bit on the brighter side so that the paint won't mix as you put it on the wet paint. It would just lay on top of it. You could also add blue if you wanted the blue to come into play there in with the green. You could certainly go back and add brush strokes of the blue. And they're all about the same size, but they're definitely not something that is measurable. It's just a stroke that's really fun to play with. Okay, so after we get the mermaid's tail complete, we are ready to start with her body. So to do that, we're going to use a peachy color. We're going to take the magenta or pink that you have in yellow and mix that together. So I'm going to get fresh white, and I'm going to put a little bit of yellow, and then I'm going to put just a smidgen of pink until it turns the color that I feel is fleshy enough to make her body look like this. And so once I have that in there, and there's not a recipe for the peachy or fleshy color, but basically it's a lot of white and a smidgen of yellow and a smidgen of pink. And once you make it up the first time, if you think that it's not pink enough, you can add more pink in it. And if you think it's not yellow enough, you can add more yellow in it. And then you can just blend that out and make sure that you get a good coverage. This could be a little pinker, so you could do that while it's wet. You can see how easy it blends if you just add a little bit of that color in. Now, I would do something that pretty much looks like an hourglass shape in here. You'll have that actually drawn on your canvas. You can go up till you see where her shoulders would be, about that area. And if you want to, you could keep painting. But basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna start putting her hair in, and her hair will cover up all of her shoulders and back. So you don't have to be very specific about that either. So I'm just gonna rinse the brush just a little bit and tap it dry on my paper towel. And then I'm gonna make the colors for her hair. Now the pink color is the magenta, and if you see, you can just follow the lines that we've drawn on there for you so that you can begin to get sort of the style of her hair. I'm just gonna use the pink by itself first to get started, and then I'll add other colors and follow the same flow for the top half of her hair. And then the left side and the right side will be just a little bit different as it flows. You can make it as curvy or as zigzaggedy as you want to once you get to the end of it. So I'll sort of start big across her hairstyle, probably with just about the width of the brush that I have here. And then as I begin to get further along on the bottom, to make sure that that is really thin and curvy, instead of using the whole width of the brush, I'm just gonna turn and paint with the toe of the brush. And then that will set up her hair, and it will be a beautiful flow of the hair just moving in the water. So that'll be the first color I use, and then I'll add yellow to that color and make the yellow a little bit more on the orange side. So it'll be pink and yellow mixed together. And then I'll go in and follow that same curve. I'm just gonna copycat it, going from the top of her hair down. And you can see I'm just using the brush stroke pattern right beside where I painted the first one. And then once I get where I need it to trail off at the end, I'm just gonna use the tiny little part of the brush, just the tip, to make the last little curl. Now I'm gonna add white to that yellow and pink color, and I'm gonna change it. So I'm gonna use that to put in right next to the last hair color I did. And this one's gonna go like behind, so I won't make that one any longer at this point. Now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna use another color. I'm actually gonna pick up alizarin crimson, and I'm going to paint with red. So the alizarin is the darker red color, and you can see it'll give us a lot of color. It'll give us a lot of bold color that's darker than we've used on the other three colors. So that's a good way to start the next one. So we just have alizarin, or a dark red, alizarin crimson, and now we can follow along with the same pattern that the trail was going. And remember, we just get thinner as we move down to the bottom. And then we'll add in white to that red and change, and we'll have a different color pink. And so with that pink, we'll go right next to it and follow the line. And then we'll begin to sort of change directions in a minute. But right now that begins to give her a real fun pattern for her hair. Okay, going to use that same color at the top just to go in and have that color. And then I can begin to do some overlapping where one color and one ringlet of hair goes over another, because that's the fun part about this picture. Her hair is just flowing in the water. So with that color, now I would like to start over with the mixing of the yellows and the oranges over this way so I can get that color repeated. Repetition is very important in art. So now I'll take those colors and curl them. You can make her hair just as wavy or curvy as you want to. You get to play around with that a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of the pink now. And I'm going to begin to use the brush strokes while the paint is wet on my brush, and I'm going to begin to pull those together just a little bit so they don't feel like they're separate. It's one hair, but it just separates into different colors. So I just used my brush with one color on it to pull all the colors together, just a little bit on the top of her head. And then you can see how it definitely still separates and carries through all the way down. And then I'm going to add another ringlet or two over here. And continue that until I have as many ringlets as I want. Add more hair with just a brush stroke of color. Just ties everything together. I'm coming on down around this way and that way. And each time I'm picking up either red or white or pink and just making the hair really lush and stand out against that green body and tail. And you can see how much fun that is when the red comes right in front of the blue for the water. Okay, so now I can go back with, I'll mix red and pink together, and I'll come in and give her a few more ringlets of curls. Okay. As I look, I just find new places that I can put the hair in. If I need to dip in water to make it flow a little easier, I can certainly do that. I can go back and get a little bit more pink on and make a few more ringlets in this area. Just let them flow all the way down her body. And then I think I'm gonna put some starfish in her hair to give her a hairpiece. I'm gonna come around with blue and black, and I'm just gonna give her a little headband, a little hairpiece. And then after I wash my brush and get the black off, I'm gonna make a little starfish shape in that area. So I'm gonna use white and a yellow ochre. And that was the color that I made, sort of an orangey color that I made in her hair a while ago. So I'm gonna put that in. And with this brush, I'm just putting in a very fun shape of a starfish. Or you can add any other kind of little shell that you might want to paint. The starfish would be fun. Or a flower. Or anything else that you see that might be in the ocean. But it would be fun, I think, to have the starfish. Just use the tip of your brush to make the corners, and then just blob in the middle. Tap, tap, and you'll get plenty of little texture for the starfish to have. And then what we want to do next is we want to come in and we want to add bubbles in the water. So we'll come in with white on the brush, so we'll wash our brush good, and then once we get it cleaned out, we're going to load it with white, and we're going to start making bubbles. We can just make circles, we can make small ones and large ones, but we don't have to necessarily make a complete circle for us to get the idea that it is bubbling. You can begin if you put a dot on your canvas, and then you go around and you make a shape that looks like a C, and then you start at the dot again and go around and make another C and combine it together. You'll have a circle, and that can certainly be a shape for your bubble. You can cover it in somewhat, but you don't have to cover it in completely, because you can leave some of the blue showing. You can have bubbles, as many of them as you want, or as few as you want, but they're just fun to put in and make your picture very interesting to look at. And I'm gonna add a little bit more water so I can make sure that she looks like she is in the water and that she's floating or moving. If you wait and do this like I'm doing at the end, it'll blend together and make her look like she's moving more. If you want to fill in all the space before you put all of her hair in, like if you do it on the beginning of the canvas, you can. It won't look like she's moving quite so much, but it's up to you when you decide to put that blue or the extra water around to give her a little bit more sense of movement, like she's actually moving up towards the top of the canvas. So if you want her in motion, what you can do is come in and go around the edges, and you're actually blending the water color that's light blue with the hair color, since it's still a little bit wet. And then it gets the illusion of movement, because you don't have a specific line. You just blend it together, and if you blend, then you get the feel of movement in the water. So you can see how I'm just mixing the watercolor in with and overlapping her hair color. And when you do that, you get a sense of her moving and her hair moving. So if you like that movement idea, you can use that. If you don't, before you paint, make sure that, well, before you paint her and her hair, make sure that you have all of this space outside of her body colored in blue. Or you can wait, if you miss some places, you can wait till the hair dries and add a little bit more of the water in between, and then you won't have any problems with there being movement at all, because all the paint will be dry. But it is a fun way to get a little bit of movement in the picture that you can't get otherwise. So I just waited in a little space so that I could put strokes of color. Now I'm having white and blue, and I'm putting it across the top of the tail, just like I did around the hair. And that way I don't have a clean edge. The tail, and now it looks like the tail is actually moving in the water too, because I let all of that blend together. So there are a lot of fun decisions that you can make on this picture. You can decide what you want to put in for your pattern on your tail. You can decide how you want to arrange your hair and how many curls you want it to have, how many ringlets you want it to have. You can decide what you want to put in her hair as a hairpiece. You can decide how many bubbles you want. And of course, you can decide if you want movement in the water or if you just want it to be pretty still. So if you want it to be still, you just need to paint all of your background canvas blue and white before you put any hair in, or do it when the hair is dry. So that way you can make sure that you have separations of color instead of it being all put together and blended out so it looks like it's moving. Now that you have finished your project, we want to see your masterpiece. Please send a picture either to our email at the Art Center of Wilmington Island at gmail.com or post it on our Facebook page. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see our latest Art at Home kits. Thanks so much for supporting your neighborhood art studio.